Welcome to Worth Asking, a podcast questioning gender inequality in politics through interviews with politicians across South Asia. In these interviews, we ask leaders about their political journeys, the challenges they face, how they overcome them and emerge as leaders, and stories of allyship and support.
Worth Asking is our effort to unpack politics as a career choice for women and the role of men's allyship in South Asian politics. And over the last 4 years, we published interviews with over 30 political leaders from across 8 South Asian countries. And this year, we launched our series as a podcast. In the previous episodes of this season, we spoke to 9 women leaders from India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, Bhutan, and Maldives. And some of these were young entrants to politics, while some of them were tenured parliamentarians. In this episode, we will reflect upon what political leaders in South Asia have told us about their career journeys with our guests, whom I see as investors in women's leadership, those who invest their resources and drive efforts to empower women. We would also delve into bringing role models closer to youth, especially young women who are aspiring to join politics. Our guests for today's episode are Srividya and Amna. Srividya is an educationist and businesswoman based in Hyderabad, India. She runs educational institutions committed to empowering young women, and she is also the co-convenor at Confederation of Indian Industries for Education and Skills. She today sits as an advisory board member at CGAP2. And Amna, our second guest, is the project coordinator at International Idea for iKNOW Politics. iKNOW Politics is working to increase the participation and effectiveness of women in political life. It is a joint project of International Idea, the Inter-parliamentary Union, IPU, and UNDP, and the UNWomen. Previously, Amna worked with UNDP and UNWomen in Pakistan on gender equality, human rights, and strengthening electoral and legislative processes. You can find more about the impact of their work linked to the description of this podcast. Welcome, Srividya and Amna. I'm glad to have both of you here and really excited about the following conversation today. Let's just jump into some of the excerpts from our previous interviews in this season. One of the guests, Dorji Wangmo, who was a member of National Assembly of Bhutan, told us that she stood up and joined politics because she wanted to become a role model for other women and for her daughters. Another guest, Nafisa Shah, a member of National Assembly of Pakistan, she told us that she, like many other women in Pakistan, was inspired by Benazir Bhutto's work in politics, and that having family members in politics also served as an inspiration. So from these testimonies and many more guests who had also shared similar experiences, I want to delve into discussing the power of role models in politics. Amna, what are your thoughts on having women from diverse backgrounds in political leadership in Pakistan, also in increasing their visibility to the larger public and its impact in Pakistan and the rest of South Asia?
So, first of all, thank you so much, Sugandha, for inviting me to this podcast today, this very important conversation on increasing women's access to politics and the political space. It's very nice and always very heartening to see initiatives like yours, which is working for gender inclusion in politics. About the question that you asked me on the significance of role models, I feel that women in South Asian societies, particularly, and the world generally, are bound in certain gender roles, which means that it's very important to have role models who are, going against the grain, doing something different, trying to break those barriers. Because let's look at this from the perspective of a young girl or a young woman who has seen certain stereotypical gender roles around her. And for her to imagine a different world, it's very important to see those people, to see these women doing, not the usual stereotypical gender roles and not being restricted. We often see women restricted to the private space, and you can't say that these are not important roles. It's only that to imagine a different future and to imagine a different future for these young women, it's important for them to see in practice these different and diverse roles. And I think something that's particularly interesting, and you mentioned it, was how it's important to also have, intersectionality in terms of caste, intersectionality in terms of, diversity of opinions when it comes to where these role models come from. Not just caste, but just generally different identities, and how we can sort of see these across different identities. So I think that is very important. That diversity in these role models. You spoke about Nafisa Shah and her and Benazir Bhutto as an important role model. Now we see in the Pakistani society, you ask a woman politician in Pakistan, and so many of them will mention Benazir Bhutto. And it's very interesting how a single person can sort of change the course of history for so many young women. And so that also shows, one, the dearth of role models for women politicians, but also the impact that a single woman can have. So I think when there's the case of role models in politics, particularly, we have such few women that a single woman working in this field can really make a huge impact. So just the marginal increase of that impact is, I think, phenomenal.
Thanks, Amna. I also believe that not just on women, this kind of role model impact is, important to observe, but also perhaps the society as a whole. For a woman to be demonstrating that there are challenges that can be overcome, breaking the stereotypes, as you mentioned, about being a woman in parliament, being a minority in a parliament, or even being a head in a rural, so-called backward area, especially in areas where patriarchy is kind of stuck to the very core of the society and the culture. Srividya, you are also a role model to many, and as a chair of CII India's Women Network, you provided a platform for young women to connect with leaders, perhaps their role models at that time, and build their skills, and even kind of boost their confidence. What have your observations been when it comes to role modeling effect? And do you think that this could address the confidence gap sometimes that we might observe in young women?
Thank you, Sugandha, for the question. Let me first congratulate you and CGAP on completion of your podcast series. I think you're giving really critical information for all women out there who are interested in pursuing politics as a career and want to really get into social impact at a bigger level. So I'll start off with a fact or a statement, say. So politics is a career like any other. It is supposed to be a career like any other, but I think it's a different beast. Because I mean, women need to be ambitious and capable and really interested in their field of career, whatever they choose. But when it comes to politics, I think none of them or none of us are really prepared to deal with the pressures that come with it. The woman in question or her family or the society as well. So getting there is one thing, but keeping that position and sustaining that position, I think, is really critical, because once you pursue politics and once you get to a certain level, and you see that there is a certain perspective that the society has on how a woman should conduct herself, or um, or you see a certain pushback, that is when I think you more challenges come to you, and then you can either persist or you choose not to. For the question, I'd like to say that see, today we have around 60 women, I believe, in the Parliament of India, which is the highest, and it's an iconic number. I mean, for me, the bill has been passed, and we're all set to ensure that there is higher political representation of women. But to actually realize this vision, and I know for a fact because I work with or I see young women on a day-to-day basis, to actually develop women leaders. We don't just need role models, but I think we need role models who have normalized this whole concept of women being in politics. Because when you see the larger than life representation of women, I don't think many women would feel that they are cut out for that. They might be capable, or they may be really interested in doing that kind of work, but the society should, I believe, learn that it is at the end of the day a career, and the impact is what matters, and not the way you look at a woman who is in that position. So the larger than life, the goddess kind of an image, I believe, might not pull in that many women, from all sectors of the society. That is one. And then, of course, I feel that you need to have friends, you need to have mentors in politics, like in any other field, because there are a lot of uncertainties, and there's a lot of crisis that comes with this role. And unless you have the confidence that you can pick up a phone and ask for help, it's really difficult to sustain in that kind of a stressful environment. And not just outside mentorship and friendship, there is a lot of domestic support that is needed for young women, both in terms of having a certain certainty at home, in terms of giving them that time, space, and also that flexibility in deciding for themselves, in terms of economic empowerment also, what they make, how much they make, or what is okay for them to spend, and all these things. And one more thing I feel is that there's a lot of awareness that has to be given to young women, in terms of what are the opportunities and pathways available for them. Like, it's not like how you see on TV, right? I mean, they're all very big success stories that you see on the media, but there are so many stories that go in the background. Women who are doing great work in politics, you might not see them on screen, but I think they need to be aware of what they can do, and also, of course, to equip them with a lot of tools, because to navigate the political landscape in our country or in any other country for a woman, I think it can be tricky waters, and they have to be really resilient and persistent. But all in all, I see that we women have a lot of potential, and I myself know a number of excellent women who've been in public service, and who continue to lead very big portfolios as elected representatives. So I see good times.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's really interesting to, I mean, you picked up on saying that politics has its own unique challenges. And I think since all of us work in a similar background, we understand how these are really complicated and multi-layered issues. And despite kind of having a lot of women who with high potential, there still are some things that need to be done to kind of have their families, the women themselves, and everyone's kind of confidence in having women's leadership being acknowledged. I'd move over to Amna on the iKNOW Politics' work on building collective knowledge about women's leadership in politics worldwide. Amna, do you see the role model effect as an impact through some of the initiatives and some of the challenges that Srividya spoke about, especially like societal perception being changed, especially for women in South Asia?
Absolutely. No, a very important and interesting point that Srividya raised was the larger than life image of a woman politician, And I feel that so much of it has to do with the narratives that are created by media and the sort of reporting that takes place around women politicians, particularly. There will be, certain reinforcement of certain stereotypes, certain values that are that women are held to, but male politicians might not be. And it sort of develops and creates and reinforces this narrative around women politicians, which makes them into, as Srividya very rightly said, into these goddesses that are, above everybody else. These certain virtues of the good woman and the bad woman, and these sort of tropes that we sort of get stuck in. And I feel that it has so much to do with the way that media reporting happens around women politicians. At I Know Politics, what we're trying to do is develop a counter narrative, an alternate stream of factual and informative information around women politicians, women political participation. So it's basically this platform of knowledge production and knowledge creation and knowledge consolidation, which focuses and draws on the expertise of four organizations that you mentioned in the beginning: the International IDEA, IPU, UN Women, and UNDP. And we're also collecting information and relevant and dependable news sources from around the world to sort of develop this global understanding and global narrative around women in politics. I feel that platforms like the I Know Politics fill that void, that we sort of feel exists due to a certain sort of reporting and a certain sort of information sharing around women politicians. I find it so, uh, like, I don't know, funny at, at some level, but I think it's so interesting how, when it comes to a woman politician, so much of the reporting would focus on what she's wearing or what's happening in her family or her personal life, and very little to do with the sort of policies that she's working on, or the sort of initiatives that she's taking. So this sort of gossip mongering around women politicians, it's just it's unfortunate, but at the same time it sort of shows where we are in our society and how we see women in the public space. So I think it's very important uh, to develop a counter narrative and to for allies, male, find the male allies here, see who and how can we come together and develop a counter narrative for this then.
Thanks for sharing that, and also the work at I Know Politics. Let's briefly hear what some of the women politicians told us about the challenges that they faced. Um, so one of our guests was Sobita Gautam, an MP from Nepal, a really young MP who had joined politics and after kind of coming to the public life, got married, and in her interview she discussed how marriage became such an issue, and also like sometimes comments on her physique, sometimes even among the other politicians having lack of confidence on a young woman's capability to take up so much responsibility as a politician, and while like there were other similar issues that were highlighted while other guests spoke, and those were like some of the experiences of discrimination and gender bias that kind of comes in their daily life as a politician. Also, they spoke about the negative impact of social media and public perception of women in politics as gender, something that both of you also briefly spoke about. We also ask all our guests about overcome these challenges and what they want for other women who are joining politics. And many of them talked about creating women's networks, implementing mentorship programs, and working with civil societies to train local government members. Um, they also talked about law and policy, and through that, I would kind of drift into our next topic about looking at policy and legal frameworks as well. While society and changing societal norms and perceptions is really important for removing and unblocking challenges for women in politics. Another area is law and policy, and maybe we could also here briefly talk about the Protection of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act, that was passed in 2013. It's often called as POSH law in India, and there have been a lot of questions, discussions, and rather confusions about applying this law for a political party member or a political party candidate, despite having examples, repeated examples of women facing harassment within political space as their workplace, which is their full-time careers. The laws are still kind of lagging behind sometimes to consider this as a formal workplace, especially because of the nature of the workplace itself. But there still seems to be some challenges across policies and law as well, and that's where perhaps civil societies like iKNOW Politics kind of comes in to support unblocking some of these challenges. Amna, could you tell us about the challenges that you and the team at iKNOW Politics are working on to unblock, and what your learnings have been so far?
So before I get into this, I think you've raised a very interesting point on prevention of harassment within the political space. Now, I see it. See, I will just take this case of Pakistan, where we have this excellent law which talks about prevention of workplace harassment. It's a very detailed and comprehensive law. But in my experience, the the existence of a law is only the first step, right? So it's without implementation, the law really does not have any impact. And in Pakistan, we see how there are so many laws around multiple things. We are sometimes called an over legislated state. But unfortunately, because there are no effective mechanisms to implement some of these very forward looking and supportive and socially, advanced laws, we see that the legislation eventually has no impact. Now, I would like to link that to our work here at iKNOW Politics, where what we're trying to do is also develop that outreach and develop that transformative social gender normative sort of a conversation around this, because eventually creation of a law and creation of a legislation, it has an impact when there's a bedrock of social change or susceptibility to social change present, which is why I feel that it is so important to develop that sort of an awareness and that outreach on these topics, like prevention of harassment, like transformative social gender norms, like inclusion of women in politics. These different things. So, what we are doing at iKNOW Politics is trying to develop that narrative and uh, support that through working with grassroots organizations across the world. So we work in the African continent, we're working in Southeast Asia, also in South Asia now. So globally, we want to engage with people working on the grassroots for these relevant themes, and how can we sort of give them the platform and amplify their voices so that they are able to not only work more concretely in their geographical area of setting, but also how can they engage across the globe with different organizations, and how can IKP, the iKNOW Politics, then link them to these different organizations working on similar themes, because something that is becoming increasingly obvious now is that in the field of gender and in the field of women political participation, our challenges more or less remain very similar. You would talk to somebody in Namibia, a woman politician, and you will realize how they're experiencing very similar problems in access to the political space that are being experienced by, somebody in the Far East. So considering this, it's very important to have networks and platforms, like you said that in your also in the interviews that you've done, a lot of women spoke about developing these networks, uh, you know uh, to support each other in accessing the political space. And I would just take this to a global level and sort of see how women globally can support each other, because this is now we should be moving towards a global movement where we sort of support each other in bringing greater access in the political space. But just another point on that is to link South Asian women. South Asian women are present across the world, and we are a force to be reckoned with. So, how can we engage these networks more effectively and use platforms like the I Know Politics in sort of connecting these geographies then and globally linking?
Thanks, Amna, for that insight. And you spoke about access, especially rather the lack of access. Um, I'd move to Srividya to discuss a little bit about access to education, something that you have focused on, and also economic and financial empowerment. Um, Tell us about your observation, in working in this field and uh, driving access to education through the educational institutions that you've led, and if you see links between education, financial independence, and participation in politics and current affairs for women.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sugandha. Thank you. So when it comes to education, I'm confident that education is the only and the most powerful instrument if we really want to get from where we are to having equal representation of women in politics. And to pick up from what Ms. Shobita Gautam had mentioned, and you were just talking about it, the perception of men around a women politician, and the impression of whether she really can, perform as a politician. I think most of those perceptions and those challenges can be addressed through education. So education, I believe we don't have enough formal education when it comes to training women to actually get into politics. But then, see, if you look at it, when does a woman really decide, when she would get into politics, right? It could be at a very later stage in life as well. So the first thing I think what's important is at any point of time, formal education, whenever a woman takes it, the quality of education has to be really good so that it gives her those problem solving and those critical thinking skills and that level of communication, those negotiation skills. Because, like I mentioned before, this is another career choice. And these skills at a formal education level are very important no matter what career you choose. And so I believe that women should choose her formal education very carefully because men still have many more opportunities to socialize and network at a very early stage in life, but women get very few options and very few circumstances. So the institution that I run, GNITS, is an all women institution. And a lot of times I get criticism in terms of being an all girls institution, women don't really get that opportunity to talk to men and build that confidence. But what I say is that women need a place where they can fail and then learn and then grow. They need a place where they don't have to be scared of criticism at a very early stage. For those women who want to really excel in all these skills that I had just mentioned, this kind of formal education is really important. And after this is the other part of education, right? When you know that I want to enter into politics, or I want to pursue this field. So that is when they have to be made aware of the political landscape as a whole and how you navigate it. Because there are many ambitious young women who want to do this, but they might be understanding it like an all black and white situation, and to be able to judge for themselves and how to work with the gray areas that these political career brings with it is I think one thing that they should be made aware of, and they should be trained in that. And most importantly, I think they should be abundantly prepared for the mental and physical challenges that they're going to get, because especially in politics, the amount of physical labor that has to be done, and I've heard this from many women, not just who are directly into politics, but who are helping their spouses as well. It's that you have to be present in so many places and talk a lot, and then just be available, to hear from people. I think that takes a lot of physical strength, and of course mental strength, because at grassroots level, still we are very less in number, for women, and men are still dominating. So when you have those many men around you, you have to be mentally strong as well to talk to them and to actually be as masculine as they are. And along with this, I think you just mentioned about financial education. I can't stress enough on the importance of financial education for women in any field, but especially here, because I think this is one field where we still don't, there is no formal number to it, right? I mean, we all know that, a corporate career, woman makes this much, or if you're an entrepreneur, you get a valuation of so much and all. But it is still uncertain as to what is the level of empowerment you get economically, when you're in politics, So I think women should, know that this is what they're getting into, and they have to be both financially independent, and they should also know how to fund their own activities, which is again completely different ball game, because in politics especially, there are a lot of instances where you will have to choose allies who would come and fund for you. You need to know how to fundraise for yourself, and then once you do fundraise, how do you manage these funds? Because there are so many levels in politics, starting from grassroots to the highest level. How do you manage funds? How do you legally manage funds? And all these things. What women? I don't think many women know about these things prior to getting into politics, unless they are working from grassroots level. So education and training them and skilling them is, I think, really, really important for them to decide that, whether they want to get into politics and how they want to, handle those situations.
And I think your experience brings in a lot of validation to some of the issues that we have discussed and some of the opportunities, especially kind of having that awareness through access on making that career choice for yourself, and being more politically aware, if not kind of joining politics as a career. So let's move to the last question of this episode. How should we encourage young women to consider politics as a career choice? Srividya, would you like to go first?
Sure. I think in order to encourage women to consider politics, there are a number of things that we can do. The first that comes to my mind is the conversation that's happening with the role models, and the work that CGAP is doing, and the work that iKNOW Politics is doing. So these conversations, when we watch and listen to women who are successfully navigating the world of politics, I believe that is the best way to encourage young women, because they see firsthand the possibility of that happening, for a woman to get from point A to point B and to successfully be in that position and run that role. And of course, secondly, I think showcase the impact that that woman is creating in politics and in her society. That would also encourage women to take up roles which can create positive impact in the society. And if women are already doing similar work, with respect to these accomplished women, they see that this is something similar, and then they're encouraged to pursue that. And finally, I think it also matters what the um, the political institutions or the political parties and the kind of policies that they have with respect to how they encourage women in their party, or how the men in their party are also trained along with women, to handle the situation where a woman has to play a leadership role, so, and is it a safe place for women to be playing such a role. So I think party policy also is a big factor for women to consider politics as a career.
So I also feel that about young women around me as well, and we have a lot of team members who are interested in politics and who have joined CGAP with an intention to kind of understand more about politics. I feel there's like a strong sense of consciousness today and awareness on issues. But I think joining and taking that step to kind of join politics sometimes still feels like a difficult step. And I think some of the things that you mentioned could really enable and encourage young women in South Asia today. Amna, over to you. What do you think should be done to encourage young women?
Thank you. Yes. So I think it's important for young women to realize that their voices and their opinions matter. I think growing up, women are taught to be a certain way. And I think we really need to change that, change the setting around, these sort of conversations. So it's important for young women to see that what they're saying has important, then it has this, sort of a standing in society. What is equally important is for young women, particularly, to realize that they must have a seat at the table. Policy making cannot happen without the opinions and without the inputs of young people. Where in the world now, globally, we see that there is, with the changing demographics, young people form a greater percentage of the overall population. And young women obviously form a significant part of the population. So to say that the future of policy and the future of governance will be developed without these voices being present at the table, it has to be seen as a great misfortune for just the system of governance that exists. So it's the realization has to come from both ends. It's important for young women to realize that they must more actively be a part of the political system, but it's also for the political system to realize how significant it is to ensure that these opinions are catered for, and these opinions and these women are then included more effectively in the political system. Lastly, just a point that Srividya made about political parties. I think it is crucial. Without a change in the way political parties are run in South Asia, we cannot see any change in the political system. This sort of male gatekeeping that exists within political parties needs to change. And just as I said in the beginning, we really need to start seeing young women in particular, and women in general. Political parties need to start seeing how important the role and how important the role of young women and women in general is towards shaping the political system now.
Thank you very much. I before I close out, I'd invite any final thoughts from both of you. If you'd like to talk about some of the work that you've been doing or any reflections, please let us know now.
Just a little bit about the platform and the I Know Politics platform. I did speak about, you also introduced it in the beginning, and we've spoken about the number of initiatives that the platform is, engaged in. We have an upcoming e-discussion on technology-facilitated gender-based violence and how to prevent it, because we did not touch too much on the digital aspect of women's political participation in this podcast. But maybe, just to talk about it a little bit, with the way things are changing and how digital technology is becoming so significant in how political narratives are designed and developed, it's important for young women also to understand how they can navigate the digital space of political participation. I feel that there are a lot of young people and especially young women who are making great use of it, and they really social movements are in many places being driven by digital technology. So it's not a space that's new to them, but I feel like there's a lot of sort of inequality, specifically when we talk about South Asian women. So there's that space to really tackle that. And these are some of the things that we'll be discussing in our upcoming e-discussions. And we'll have the link, hopefully, in the section, in the subsection to this podcast. And I would encourage all your viewers to also participate in this discussion and share their opinions and share their comments, so we can have this as an ongoing discussion moving forward.
Thank you. Absolutely. We link everything that we have mentioned today, including the online e-discussion, in the podcast description. To all the listeners, please find it and do join this. Over to Srividya.
Thank you, Sugandha. So, as my final thoughts, I would want to reiterate once again the importance of having the right role model or a right mentor, for women who are interested to get into politics. So there are multiple platforms like what I do at GNITS as one of our initiatives is we have something called as a women leadership conclave, where we invite around 50 to 60 women leaders to come to our campus, so that there is a one-on-one interaction between these ambitious young women that I have in my campus, and they can actually see in person, meet and understand what a woman leader looks like, and what it actually takes to get there. And I was also the chair of IWN, which is Indian Women Network, the women wing of CII. There as well, there is a beautiful mentorship program that happens at corporates, where they match a mentor and a mentee one on one again, where there is a 6 months program, a properly structured program that happens over there. And the mentor is, given 6 months to, how do you say, handhold a mentee. And the mentee really, I mean, the level of learning that happens over there when you actually have access to a mentor is something that no formal or informal, no kind of education that can give you that experience. So this kind of, I think, access to having a role model is really, really important. And also CSOs like yourself, like civil society organizations like yourself, I think you are really well placed to actually scout and bring in aspiring women who are interested in politics, and create and implement really impactful training programs for them. And of course, you would definitely find very good partners. I'm there up for it, and I'm sure I Know Politics. Amna also is there advocating the same thing. So yeah, that's it from my end.
Thank you very much. This was a really insightful episode for us and for all our listeners, among whom might be some future leaders of South Asia. And I am grateful for to be connected to both of you and to have both of you as supporters of the work that we do here at CGAP.
Thank you for joining us on Worth Asking. We express our gratitude to 81 donors who made this year's podcast possible. To learn more about our work and how you can support us, please join our community by visiting www.cgapsouthasia.org/join. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review and share with your peers, especially young women interested in joining politics. Thank you and stay tuned.